More than 8 billion humans are alive today. Now imagine running the human story backwards, past cities, past farming, past Homo sapiens itself. Stop about 930,000 years ago. A 2023 genetic study reported something extraordinary. The population behind our lineage may have narrowed to an effective size of just 1,280. And according to that reconstruction, it stayed extremely small for about 117,000 years. That is almost 10 times longer than agriculture has existed. So what happened? Was there an asteroid, like the one linked to the dinosaurs? A giant supervolcano? Some prehistoric disaster that almost erased the human family tree in one blow? Surprisingly, researchers have not tied this proposed bottleneck to any single dinosaur-style catastrophe. The leading suspect here is more unsettling because nothing had to explode. The world may simply have kept changing the rules. Around this time, Earth was passing through the Mid-Pleistocene transition. Climate cycles that had followed a rhythm of roughly 41,000 years became longer and more extreme, moving towards cycles closer to 100,000 years. Africa did not simply freeze. The bigger problem was that the survival map kept moving. Rain belts shifted, lakes shrank or vanished, woodlands opened into grasslands, animals moved with the water. For us, a lake is scenery. For a small early human group, it could mean drinking water, food, prey, stone for tools, and a route to another group. Lose the lake, and you might lose almost everything that made that place livable. Now imagine one possible scene. A band of 30 or 40 people has survived beside the same water system for years. Then several dry seasons come. The shoreline retreats, animals stop appearing, a route to another group becomes too dry to cross. Some people leave, some die. Others survive, but lose contact with their neighbors. In a modern city, losing 5 adults barely changes the future population. In a group of 30, 5 missing adults can erase whole family lines, skills, and connections to other groups. We cannot know that this exact scene happened. But if similar losses happened again and again across many places and generations, you do not need one asteroid to create a collapse. You can lose a population piece by piece. Humans around this broad period were not helpless. At Oldupai Gorge in Tanzania, evidence from around 1 million years ago shows Homo erectus repeatedly using rivers and ponds in a harsh semi-desert environment. Stone tools were already part of their survival kit. So how could capable humans survive when the places that kept them alive kept disappearing or moving? One possibility is that being scattered actually helped. Picture many small groups living beside different rivers, lakes, and valleys. A drought wipes out one, another survives. A disease hits one group, another never encounters it. Later, some surviving groups meet again. Genes move, people move, knowledge moves. Population biologists call this kind of scattered network a metapopulation. Think of it as many lifeboats instead of one ship. Some can sink without everyone sinking. But there is still the strangest question. Why 1,280? Scientists did not find 1,280 skeletons. They worked backwards from DNA and people alive today. Every generation adds new mutations. Some remain rare. Others spread through many descendants. Imagine each mutation as a colored tag on a gigantic family tree. If the ancient population stays large, the tree has many branches. During a severe bottleneck, many branches stop. Only a narrower bundle reaches the future. That changes the mix of rare and common genetic variants that survives to today. So scientists can look at modern genomes and ask, what kind of ancient population history would create this pattern? In 2023, researchers used a method called FitCoal to analyze 3,154 modern genomes. The computer compared different possible population histories. The best-fitting reconstruction produced a dramatic cliff. Around 930,000 years ago, the effective population fell from roughly 98,000 to around 1,280. Then remained near that low level until about 813,000 years ago. That is where the headline number comes from. It is not an exact count of bodies alive. Think of it as the estimated genetic width of the family tree that kept contributing to later generations. The true number alive was probably higher, but genetics cannot give an exact ancient head count. But even as a genetic estimate, the result is dramatic. In that model, the effective population had fallen by almost 99%, and nearly 2/3 of the genetic diversity that might otherwise have reached the present was lost. And who were these people? Not Homo sapiens. Our species would appear hundreds of thousands of years later. They belonged to an older part of the human family tree, safest to call ancestral Homo, somewhere near the deep roots of the lineages that later led to us Neanderthals and Denisovans. There is one important twist. Not every genetic method sees the same enormous crash. Later studies using different approaches reconstructed a shallower valley, with the effective population staying in the several thousand range rather than falling all the way to 1,280. The FitCoal team pushed back in 2026, arguing that some methods can smooth a sudden ancient crash into something gentler. So the argument today is simple enough to picture. One method sees a canyon, others see a valley. The exact depth is still disputed, but 1,280 remains one of the most dramatic estimates ever proposed for this part of our ancestry. And this was not the last time the human family tree narrowed. Much later, around 60,000 years ago, Homo sapiens began the major expansion from Africa into Eurasia. This time, the bottleneck happened for a very different reason. Africa still contained a much larger human population. Only a small branch successfully established itself outside the continent. Genetic models put the effective founding population behind most later non-African ancestry at roughly 2,000 to 3,000. So what happened to everyone else? They did not all die. Many stayed in Africa. Earlier Homo sapiens groups had already ventured beyond Africa, but most left little or no genetic contribution to people living outside Africa today. The later expansion entered a difficult world. There were vast dry regions, changing climate windows, unfamiliar winters, and new landscapes. Depending on the route, some groups may also have faced narrow sea crossings. And around this broad period came one of the largest eruptions of the last 2 million years. Toba, about 74,000 years ago. But scientists cannot simply say, the volcano killed them down to 3,000. The bottleneck was probably more complicated. Picture a much larger population in Africa. Only a small group moves out. Some settlements fail, others survive. Then only part of the survivors moves farther and starts the next settlement. Each new frontier is founded by only part of the previous population. That is the founder effect. Think of a large city sending out a small convoy. The city is still there, but the convoy carries only a fraction of its families and genetic variation. Then, only part of that convoy continues to the next frontier. After several frontiers, that branch can become genetically much narrower than the population it came from. Some people certainly died during difficult migrations, but the 2,000 to 3,000 estimate does not mean all Homo sapiens were killed down to that number. It describes the narrow genetic gate passed through by the branch that produced most later non-African ancestry. Later, those migrants mixed with Neanderthals and other archaic humans, adding new branches back into the story. So, human history is not one smooth rise from a tiny primitive population to 8 billion people. It is a tree that repeatedly narrowed, split apart, survived, and reconnected. And look at how quickly the scale of change has accelerated. The proposed ancient bottleneck lasted about 117,000 years. Agriculture has existed for only about 12,000 years. The Industrial Revolution began only around 250 years ago. And the age of generative AI is only just beginning. For most of our evolutionary history, major change unfolded across thousands of generations. Now a technology can transform human life within a decade. Our genes still evolve, but culture and technology can change the environment around us far faster than natural selection can redesign us. So, if humanity ever passes through another near-extinction bottleneck, what will cause it? Another slow shift in climate? A pandemic? A war? Or something created by a technological species that our ancestors could never have imagined? Nobody knows. But that is the strange perspective hidden inside the number 1,280. More than 8 billion humans sounds invincible. Yet our family tree may once have become extraordinarily narrow, and the next chapter of that tree is being written faster than ever.